Let's do it.
All right, and here we are for another episode of Quantum Kirk. We have another producer hopeful. We're on a run this week. We have Coleman joining us for my all-time favorite episode. I said this on one of my last appearances on Kirk Show when we were talking about Danny, when you brought your paper pen to the studio, which was an
Great
all-time
game.
moment for me. Yeah, great game.
Hubcap.
When Kirk asked us what our favorite episodes were, to review, I said I want to do Gina. Gina's my all-time favorite. This era of KMS is my all-time favorite era, and I'm excited to have someone who's never listened to it in Coleman and who's getting new to the show and catching up on episodes. So I'm excited to hear what he thinks. And I think the perspective of Coleman just leaving Barstool, maybe knowing a lot of the behind-the-scenes characters and things like that, will bring a nice, fresh perspective to this episode. What do you think, Danny?
No doubt, Jack. Thanks for or Coleman. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Appreciate having you. Again, to Daver's point, like it's one of those things. I'm almost a little jealous that you're getting to listen to these episodes for the first time. Re-listening's fun, and it's been long enough since some of these that I've definitely forgot more than I remember. But to kind of come at it with a fresh perspective, I think is interesting. And I think, Dave will get to it, but I think it's a good point as well. You, A, just leaving Barstool, and B, being, younger than both of us and a little bit closer to sort of that college age where we start to see some of the opinions of a couple people that are a little bit younger.
Crazy, man.
So we're really interested to hear your perspective on that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so just in relation to my re-listening, the last time I heard from Ellie Schnitt was Kirk adopting her. So this was just the complete turn on that, which was awesome. So that was really funny to me. But we went from talking about weather and being an old crotchety man to getting right down and dirty with the riots. So good stuff.
With the riots, good stuff. So all right, so let's paint the picture here for everybody. We are recording this on Tuesday. The Sacco show is Saturday. Once again, Adolf Menners runs this network. Who knows when he's going to release this? We just recorded with Mick an episode, Coleman, and we recorded with Andrew Augustus last Thursday. So Danny was willing to take blame for Augustus's performance on Friday. He's saying maybe we kept him up too late, but we had nothing to do with the performance Sunday, Danny. So that theory went out the window. When Gus buried himself and doesn't know how to run a Twitter account. So we're not taking any blame for that.
Yeah, I still love the guy, but that was tough. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. So
yeah. I mean, he still had his moments. I mean, the shock collar thing right at the end was electric. I really, no pun intended, but I'm kind of hoping that comes to fruition in some way, hopefully at the live show. But in talking about Sacco real quick, got to plug the pay-per-view, barstool.tv/PPV. Please go buy right now. Again, we don't know when this is coming out. Technically, I don't know if it's before or after. But if it is before, please buy.
And you can still buy after. You can still buy after.
Still buy after. There you go.
There you go.
So
good job,
rewatch. Maybe you guys can do a rewatch of the live show someday of this one because it's going to be electric. So good stuff there. But in relation to this episode too, I mean, it starts out with the announcement of the Sacco live show for the first time.
We're going to get there, Coleman. Great point. So I do want to paint the picture. So we're recording this on Tuesday. Coleman, when are you going in?
Either Friday night, Saturday morning. I got to figure out plans.
No, aren't you? You're not going in to do a show?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thursday. So
okay.
I'm driving up tomorrow. We'll go in Thursday morning, and then from there, planning out whether it's going to be like a Friday night trip, Saturday morning trip, leaning in. So either way, but yeah, Thursday.
But you're going into the show Thursday. We're recording this on Tuesday. So I don't know when Mender's going to release this. He could release this afterwards, but I just want everyone to know when we're recording, what day. So if something comes up, we have it. Danny, we start off every episode. Please give us the date and the actual name of the episode if people want to go back and listen either after they listen to Quantum Kirk or before.
So this would be June 4th, year of our Lord 2020. The episode's title is The Gina Show.
Okay. So we are in the midst, boys, of the summer of love, as some people like to call it. Okay. We are in the shit here with BLM. We're rioting. We are COVID. I mean, this is
Kirk Cousins, the worst tyrant.
Kirk, yes, this is the worst time to that I can remember of the COVID that summer. It sucked. Everything was sucked. You didn't know what was going on in the world. But I'll tell you, I've said this. I'm going to stick to my guns, Danny. This is my favorite era of KMS. This was Kirk at his absolute peak of calling out hypocrisy, of calling out bullshit, of having Dave Portnoy's back one of the only people at the company that just had Portnoy's back the whole time. And it's my favorite episode all time of Kirk. Coleman, you started it off, though. As I always say, every episode on this show, time is a flat circle in the KMS world. Kirk is announcing that they're going to do Saco 1, social distance Saco 1, which, by the way, didn't happen. I just want everyone to know that. No one's social distanced at all. There's only supposed to be 250 cars. There's probably more than 250 cars.
Yeah, any buses show up or?
yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so Saco 1 is going on. He's announcing it. It's going to happen at the end of the month. So yeah, Coleman, when you heard that, did that like throw you off? Like, holy shit, I'm going into Saco, I think 5. I think this is Saco 5. Trying to be the producer, and this is like Saco 1. Did that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a cool perspective, I didn't think anything too crazy about it. It was just like, oh wow, like this is clearly a place in a lot of Kirk Minifans, in Minifans' hearts where it's like, okay, like we've come a long way, and there's still this big live show going on, so it must be important. It must be this big deal. So just really grateful to be able to be a part of another one coming up this weekend. Really excited.
Yeah. Danny, did any thoughts on where you were, the timestamps, like what's going on in the world, what's going on in your life, things like that? We always like to get into that on this show.
Yeah, so it was a crazy time. I think this was another lawn mowing episode for me, where I was mowing away out in my backyard, listening to the craziness that was this episode. But it was
masked up, I assume.
Absolutely, of course, yeah. Gotta have the mask on outside, right? This was, like when you're protesting, right?
Yeah, for identity purposes.
This was
good call, Coleman.
This was such a weird time. I mean, this is right in the middle of that craziness, and especially June. I think June might have been the epicenter of it, when protests were just going crazy. And COVID was still an unknown enough that people didn't really know what was going on. This is pre-vaccine. This is like a lot of people still trying to figure out, what's going on. Just in the world. So it was definitely a little bit of a weird time. And but I think the Saco announcement was a nice bright spot at this point.
I remember that. I remember thinking, Danny, good point. I remember thinking like, oh shit, okay, I get to see people. Like I'm going to go see people.
Good news.
Here's some good news. Yeah, because the Wilbur had been canceled, I believe, for like the second time. So Coleman, if you don't know this, we were supposed to have the Wilbur show like twice already, and it had already been pushed back. And Kirk says the next date was supposed to be September. He's already knowing that that's no chance of that fucking happening.
Damn.
So that's why he decided to do Saco, because he's like, we got to do something to get together. We got to do something to the fans. I believe, what was the first Wilbur, Danny? February or March is when the original was supposed to happen. I want to say.
I believe it was. I think it was March of February of 2020. You're right in there. And so this is June. It's been pushed to September, and it didn't actually happen for another almost 2 years after that. So unbelievable. So the fact that they filled in with this, they went live on YouTube for the Saco announcement, and then about 10 minutes they cut the feed, and then it just goes straight to audio only at that point. But this was
I want to get Coleman's perspective on Coleman. Like, you weren't a Minifan at this point. We all know that. You've been very honest about that. Where are you though at this point in your life? Like, where are you still at Boston College? Are you living in New York City? What are you doing?
So I'm at BC. So when COVID started, I had just gotten back from spring break my sophomore year. I was in the Cayman Islands with a bunch of guys. And then
you were one of those guys, huh? You were one of those guys. You were out there spreading COVID, Yeah. Remember the news? Remember the news of people on kids like you just saw spring break?
You just saw red coming overseas. That was me.
That was you.
So came back next week. I think that was when like Tom Hanks got it right after, and that's when everyone knew it was like serious. It's like, oh shit, America's dad. Here we go.
That was NBA shut down that week, I think, right?
Rudy Gobert and everything. Yeah. So we
look at the microphone.
We get sent home. I'm just basically where I am right now in my parents' house in the basement.
So you go back to New Jersey, okay?
Yep, back to Jersey. Just like you guys, didn't really know what was going on. Didn't know if I would be going back to school in the following fall. I mean, it was just a weird time. I will say though, the importance of this first Saco Live event, like you guys have been hinting at, and even podcasts in general at this time. I mean, let's remember there was really no sports or anything going on.
Nope.
So really, outside of the refunneled Netflix cycle that you were getting and like Tiger King and bullshit like that, podcasts were huge. This was an outlet where you were hearing from people that you were accustomed to listening to, that felt like you had a familiarity with. So hearing from these people on a daily basis was massive at the time. And even I think Mick pointed out the other day, I was podcasting back then as well.
I think everyone
But
started a podcast. I
exactly,
started a podcast. Like
exactly.
literally, no one had more podcasts in the world than at this point in time
Yeah.
in
You had
history.
people
Agreed.
like me that had no business talking to a microphone,
Yeah.
just
Agreed.
getting on live streams anyway. You know,
Yeah.
fuck it.
But you know, that's what's interesting too, is even outside of Kirk and what it meant for Minifans at the time, I'm assuming the importance that someone like Ellie Schnitt has and what people are saying on podcasts becomes even enlarged and heightened. Because nowadays, if people were to say the things that were being said on this episode by Ellie, you know, there's a greater pedestal that they're put on during this time. So words really did matter a lot at this time. So for Kirk to call it out in the way that he does over the course of this episode is phenomenal.
Okay, agreed. We're getting a little ahead. I want to like go step by step, but that is
Sure.
a great point. I do want to say too, like for you, right? You're a younger dude. You're trying to sophomore, junior in college. This must have been a terrible time to like be in college and do all that. And you brought up a great point, Coleman, in that for me, this is why I think so. When you hear Minifans, when you hear Barstool people complain about Minifans and they're fucking crazy and they don't blah 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 and they don't leave us. This is why. This is why, Coleman. This era right here, like when Kirk would say attack, we would attack. When we would fucking because this is all I had. I remember like putting my headphones on when Steve was late releasing an episode. You should have seen Twitter, Coleman. We would lose our fucking minds. We would be like, Steve, where's the fuck is the episode today? Like, what's going on? Because that's all you nailed it. That's all we had. And when Barstool people, when you hear about Barstool people, when they would complain about us as Minifans, it would be because we would just be rabid. Like Kirk would be mad at a Barstool person, and then we would all get on Twitter after the episode. To Danny's point, we were not live on YouTube, so everyone waited for the drop and then listened, and then you'd get on fucking Twitter and be like, "You motherfucking piece of shit." You went at us today. Did you catch your eye, Coleman, now just being a recent Barstool employee, the beginning of this episode where Kirk is shitting? You're used to Kirk being Mr. Barstool right now. The dozen.
You know,
the
I get
trivia.
it, though,
Yeah, but he's
Right
not
at
happy with Barstool at this point right now. He calls Big Cat Pussycat.
Yeah.
All right. He's not happy with Big Cat. He's not happy with Riggs. He calls Riggs a piece of shit. So did that catch your eye at all, being a recent Barstool employee, and see how he gets along with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there can be two camps within Barstool. Like there are the people that, play the buddy buddy, almost like office sitcom of it all, where everything is fun and lighthearted, and that's great. But then you have, the Kirks and Dave at his foundation is this too.
Yes.
Where they're just authentic and are going to tell you how it is, call things out that aren't true or misleading, and just be real and authentic people. And I think that we get that a lot more today with Dave buying everything back and this newfound.
We're back. Yes.
It very much is like a Barstool is back type of deal. Again, though, I mean, I can understand why maybe some people would shy away from this topic. I mean, Ellie just threw herself right in, not knowing anything really. But a lot of people I could see shying away from wanting to talk about these things because the cameras are always on. And so in this society where you have to have the exact opinion that is displayed across all media or whatever. Groupthink, it's a tough place to be in. So some people, may not want to touch it. Some people may just, feed into that groupthink to make it easier on themselves. It's a difficult line to thread, but overall, I think that this was an important time to call stuff out when it was invalid or wrong.
So Danny, and Coleman doesn't know, or if Coleman gets the job, we're telling all the producers, Coleman, bring back the drops. We want drops. How good was Steve at these fucking drops? How much was Steve chomping at the bit at the beginning of this episode to get to Ellie and Michaela and Gina?
Shut the fuck up.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So I think Kirk at the beginning of this episode, guys, if you're listening, he announces Sacco. He talks about the pizza fund. Coleman, do you know what the pizza fund is? Do you get that at all?
So run me through that. I caught that, but not exactly sure.
So basically, these guys, Andy Mayo, who's gone in studio now. Obviously, he sucks Kirk off now. He was a hater. He was a piece of shit. He was, he had to be banished from the world for a little while.
Okay.
And we'll review the episode one day of Steve just literally clipping fucking Andy's nuts. We're gonna have to review that episode one day. It's a great episode. But Kirk, they started this this thing to raise money, and to get pizza. Danny, you might know the story better. Break it down in more coherent than I'm doing right now.
Well, basically, the question was there a misconstruement of funds? So was this money actually used where it was supposed to go or not?
Where it's supposed to go? They were getting money for a billboard, and then they used it for pizza for the vigil. I think, Danny, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Yeah,
I believe so. They were going to buy a billboard to make fun of something, and then they used it for pizza instead. And for Murchison, that's right. For Murchison, they used it for pizza at the vigil instead. Andy Mayo was ranting and raving that they stole money from Minifans. It became a big thing. And then that's the pizza fund. And then Mancock, he also mentions Mancock, because Mancock, they raised money for this little girl. And basically it came out that the father then went gambling that night. And Kirk raised $25,000. So they still mention it to this day. That's what they call the Mancock Gambling Fund. So
the Montante before Montante, basically.
Montante before Montante.
Good one.
Yes,
also, someone else who borrows money from Minifans, although I don't think Mancock ever gave it back. Now, word has it, he's gambling 10, 20K a week on horse racing.
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. Yes, that's behind the scenes stuff. But
love to get him on, or he needs to maybe go on Where Are They Now whenever that show starts.
With John. Jeez. Yeah. So Jack Coleman, that is when they're saying, hey, we're going to sell tickets to these live show. That's what they mean by we're not going to steal. That's what they talk about, the pizza fund and Mancock fund. So that's what they mean there. So anyway, they're talking about that, and Steve is dropping the Ellie fucking sound. He's playing the drops, and you can tell he's chomping at the bit. They go over the Drew Brees American flag thing. I don't even want to get into that. That's been debated so many times. You can do that on your own time. I want to get right to the crux of it, right to the thing. Michaela, Ellie Schnitt. Now, Coleman, did you have any crossover with these people at all?
No. I think so. Alana was Ellie's producer at one point, I believe. And then she did Mean Girls and also Dates Grinnell. So I was kind of in the midst of, I didn't really interact with her too much. Just, polite stuff here and there, but nothing crazy like that. But that was really the only interaction. Ellie was gone by the time I was there.
Yeah, so that's a kill
full
for
Mean
Kirk.
Girls mode by that point, baby.
Yeah. So that's a kill for Kirk. Ellie was the first Kirk kill. So to give you some update, after all this went down, she reached out to Erica and to Dave to have Kirk back off. They told her no, you went at him. You voiced your opinion. You guys are content. We can't tell him not to go at it. Even though she's a younger girl, it kind of could have looked bad. But she would, you're content. And I think that's what we say all the time. If you put your face on a camera and you go do something, you've got to be ready to get shit. And especially with the dumb shit that she says in this episode. So Danny, go ahead. What's the first dumb thing she says?
Well, and this is so just real quick though, for some background on Ellie. I mean, Kirk did name her his daughter. If you remember her first appearance on the show, she was in on the joke. She played along.
Yeah,
it was joking about Kirk's so old. There was a little bit of this at the beginning of this, but that went away very quickly. All humor goes out the door very quickly on this on Ellie's podcast in this episode. But she would play along, and if you remember, there was that one famous incident where you had all the Yankees fans that didn't clean up the Chinese
great
food.
Ellie Schnitt moment.
And then they made them all turn around, and she did the play-by-play. That was legitimately very, very funny. So she had it in her. And just to skip way ahead, Dave, don't get mad at me, but at the very end, you'll kind of notice, and they call her out. Maybe she's not quite a true believer. Did she really know what she was getting into with this podcast?
No, not at all.
So not to defend her totally, but there was some goodwill that got used up very quickly, and then it went downhill from here.
Well, because I think that happened in this country at the time, Danny. I don't want to get too political on the show and get into our personal viewpoints, but I just think that Trump and a lot of stuff broke people's brains to the point where they couldn't, fun was out the window. They thought that they were on a fucking crusade to do God's fucking work. And it's you are a rich 23-year-old fucking white girl who has never, ever, ever interacted with anyone that you're sitting here trying to fucking save. You're white knighting.
Yeah.
This was the height of liberal white women white knighting in America, thinking that they were going to save all of these poor people, and they would never ever live next door to them. Let's just be told. I'm going to call it out. That's the worst type of person to me. That's the worst type of person.
And at the same time, in COVID, everyone was at home watching TV endlessly. You're in this just echo chamber that relentlessly was force feeding you all this information while simultaneously telling you that you're right, you're doing the right thing. All this bullshit that, we're seeing, I think, some of the side effects of in today's day.
Big time.
A lot of that just, when you do these things, when you come out and make these statements, there is no contradiction. So that's why when you have a show like Kirk's and for Minifans who on the other end of that are being told constantly that they're wrong, they're wrong. Everything you believe, every foundation of your belief is wrong. I can understand why you'd be waiting for something like this to come out on a daily basis, just, bursting at the seams to get told, maybe you're not wrong. Maybe you have some valid points.
Coleman, and that's what's crazy about Kirk. He doesn't claim to be right on any of this.
Yeah.
All he's doing is saying, hey, maybe there is another side to this that we can look at and have a conversation about. And he was the only one, Coleman, that I can remember that was willing to do that. He's like, listen, we need police reform. I'm not saying we don't need police. Like, he's not like a Jerry Callahan. He's so far right, he can't be like told that he's, wrong on something. He's like, he's just centrist. He's like, hey, but maybe burning down the police buildings or saying defund the police to inner city communities might be a really bad fucking thing, you dummies, while you guys live on the Upper East Side of New York and have no crime or whatever the case may be.
But hey, the biased media will tell you otherwise,
Yeah. So Coleman, let me ask you something. As a young kid who's like, you're in college at this point, right? And I get it, right? Famously, you don't jerk off. Good for you. But you got to be out there trying to bang. How hard is it to talk to these fucking vapid girls at this age? And
sure
like
there were none of those at BC, right?
Yeah, at Boston College.
To be honest,
you didn't have any Ellie Schnitz at Boston College. No chance.
Honestly, to be honest, I think Boston College has more of a conservative backing to it. So I don't think it's nearly as liberal minded as a lot of other schools in the area. So I don't think it was as bad politically. Divided. I was a part of student government throughout my time there. So nothing crazy. I was just in like student initiatives.
Danny has a little Steve Robinson in him, huh? He has a little Steve Robinson in him, Danny.
I seriously, I ride
the Chestnut Hill wire.
I ride very, very middle of the line with a lot of this stuff, just because I did have that. I was also a political science major, which I don't even know if I really got anything great out of that. It was just more so a lot of professors telling us that like this goes on, but none of it really matters because in the end of the day, it's just going to be, whatever the populace thinks or whatever.
You seem to be a reasonable, thoughtful human being, and that is the case. I think a lot of people in real life are actually pretty down
a lot
the middle
like that
or somewhere near there. It's just what you hear about every day, and not to have to jump into this, but it is. It's you hear things that are so far slanted one way or the other. It's crazy.
Well, I think that's why I dove more into my journalism background too, though, because I always thought to question, like don't just always take what's given to you on its face and buy in. There's sides to every story, like we got at earlier, but it's important to ask those tough questions and to truly understand before you can have a valid opinion.
So good point. If I could, Dave, not to cut you, just because it's such a good segue, I think, because yes, Kirk brought up all these things like maybe don't burn on the police stations, but he also asked like, hey, did you do any research? Do you know where this money is going? Right?
Hold on, Danny, you just segued into my segue. I fucking love you, Danny. We're the same brain right now. So I literally have right here written down in the first Kirk was right moment. This jumped out at me re-listening to this episode fucking 2 years later, where he calls out the bail movement, where Michaela and Ellie and Gina are promoting to send money and signatures and the first thing that you can do, and the BLM bail movement fund, and Kirk and Steve are fucking right. We end up finding out some people go to jail for fraud. Some people are buying houses with this money. Some of these funds never donated a goddamn thing, or they donated to bail funds where fucking murderers and rapists ended up getting released. People that had nothing to do with, the BLM movement at all. So thank you, Danny, because that's the first thing. Kirk and Steve were they nailed it. They literally nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, you can even see on the opposing end of it how, like a show like Telemarketers, where you had a pro-police fund that was being promoted or whatever, and this just wasn't the truth. It wasn't going towards any police officers or department or anything. It was just being, endlessly funneled. So
a lot of grifters came out of the woodwork during this time. Yes,
definitely.
Yeah. So that's the first Kirk was right moment. Now, Coleman, re-listening, there's a little point here where do you hear a different tone than now what you're hearing on the show? Do you hear Kirk getting mad at Steve? Once again, me and Danny talked about this last episode. No one's ever going to get it as bad as Steve Robinson got it. It's just impossible. Kirk was meaner then. He was more on edge. He's lighter with you guys now. He won't get nearly as mad. Steve doesn't have the clip at the 3-minute mark, and I thought Kirk was going to jump over the desk and strangle him.
Yeah. So where is this in relation to the death of Steve Robinson? Is this before?
This is after.
Okay, after. Got you.
Yes.
Because when I heard that, I was like,
after.
oh shit! Like, is this another death of Steve Robinson? Essentially,
No,
I didn't know if it was.
Yeah.
Not even close.
But I think it could have been close because he then pulls up the podcast on the side, and I couldn't tell if he was just like scrubbing through and getting points, or
I think he was scrubbing through.
So exactly, I think this could have been. We were borderline about to get another death of Steve Robinson.
He's like, I fucking texted you, Steve. I texted you from 3 minutes. Are you playing 3 minutes? Like you could.
Great
so
point.
that
Great point, Coleman.
yeah.
That was actually like a mental note that I had that. Going forward, if there's anything that comes up like that where it's a direct text or anything, like those clips need to have the audio mark at the front. And actually, the ones I sent to you guys for this, I had the audio marks you sent me just to get in that practice.
There you go.
Perfect.
See, so we're learning here. Look at this.
Yeah.
Quantum Kirk is helping producers. Okay, we're helping.
We're just so good like that, Dave.
Do you know, Danny? It's unbelievable. So he's annoyed by Steve early in this episode. He's annoyed that he doesn't have the clip. I'm more talking tone, Coleman. Do you hear any tone difference between Blind Mike then and now? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know if I necessarily could tell anything different. I thought that Blind Mike was more vocal on the points being made in this episode. Like I thought that he laid into more of his personal take or whatever than, just being the side funny man to everything. Like he had his fantastic moments in this too. But I thought he really was laying into it pretty hard. And it was all three of them coming at this in unity. It was that's why I think the episode was as great as it was because everyone had the same game plan without even having to say it.
Yes. So this is post fencing Mike. So this is we always have this timeline, Coleman, on this show where we have Mike's mental break where he went, I don't know if you know the whole story. He got drunk in Madawaska 1. He took shit for a couple months. He almost got fired to the point where he was contemplating killing himself. So he went away. He went to fencing school. He went to blind school. And then he came back and that's when he started his Patreon. He wasn't a Barstool employee. So this is post-fencing Mike. He's much more confident. He's much more willing to get into it. And this is where, when him and Kirk riff, like they do now, that's when Mike's at his best. When they volley back and forth, like that's top echelon Blind Mike. And at the end of this episode, they really do a fantastic job. Danny, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Mike is definitely shining. I think whenever there's a topic that he can get passionate about, which, he's obviously, none of these guys are faking it. I think one thing that really set off probably all three of them, and I think anyone who's a real, Kirk Minahan show fan will feel this, when Ellie refused to come on the show, on and defend herself, come on and talk. Kirk even brings it up. Hey, I'll do a collaboration. We'll fundraise together. Yeah. But I want to have this conversation. And just the refusal to do that, I think it's such a coward move. To go on a podcast, put out
especially you work at Barstool. You work at Barstool at this point. This isn't Jack Schneider on NewJersey.com. She works at Barstool. She's content. Yes.
Get on and argue. But the fact is she is smart enough to know she gets on. She has nothing to back up her assertions. She did no research because otherwise she would have got on and been like, fuck you, Kirk. And it would have been a great back and forth. But,
I think that's a case throughout all of Barstool. And something that I personally, when I was there, took to heart. You see all of and I mentioned this a couple of times, but you see all of these big heavy hitters, whether it's Kirk, Dave, Big Cat, whoever, they are willing to do anything and everything. And will just, if they are asked, they do it for content's sake. And that was me too. If I was asked to, do anything, even if I wasn't comfortable with it, I just jumped in and said, hell yeah, like, let's get this done. So the fact that she denied that, like that, I think really shows the crux of what Barstool had, started to become around that time where people started to be divided and separated into their own little brands and worlds and not worry about the overarching Barstool. But we're getting back to that again, I think, like I've been saying.
Because I will say, and I think, Dave, you may have him in your notes here to talk about, but that Josh guy, at least he came on and argued. He went back and forth on Twitter. Like, nobody likes him.
But he's a cocksucker. But
yes. And he did hide here and there. But for the most part, he would like pop out and, maybe after a few pops, a few drinks, he'd come on and or start
A couple
tweeting away.
ciders, as
Hopefully-
Kirk likes to
yeah.
say.
But
Yeah,
exactly,
hopefully-
at least there was
Or
some
Clemmer, I mean.
engagement there, though. Whereas
Yeah.
for Ellie, like, this was her job. That's part of your job. Like, if you get on and you say something crazy, you got to have.
No,
follow-up there.
and to
Yeah.
Coleman's point, she was an influencer, and the stuff that she was saying. Do we have any of it? Can we play the burning down? Danny, do you have any of those clips? Do we have anything?
So Coleman cut all this stuff, so we'll figure out how to get it in post here. But so we'll.
All right, we're gonna put it in post. Okay, so like it's crazy.
So we have the
that
guide to rioting is one of them, and then the white when Kirk's going through her Twitter followers.
yes,
and-
that's unbelievable. Yeah,
That
so
was
the
crazy.
guide, the guide to writing. Like she literally had someone on there who's literally giving a way to go and riot and burn down police stations and do all this stuff. And like I'd love to know, Ellie, where are you now? Like, are you still helping these black
Yeah.
people? Are you in the community? Are you volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club in Dorchester or Roxbury or wherever you live at now? Gina, where's Gina? I want to know. I want an update from Gina. Someone in the Minifan world, MHP, if you're listening, you're a good investigator. Find me Gina, MHP.
Yeah.
And I want to know, this girl is probably married with a kid in fucking, working, making $120,000 a year somewhere in finance or some shit
Yeah.
like that. These people are the fucking worst because there's no follow.
Wellesley, yeah.
Wellesley,
Just
they
in a
give
W
you
town. Yeah.
they're reading they give you a reading list. Like they're I think Kirk says it, children. They're children and they're telling you how to like what you should be reading and what you should be doing. And it's like it's so fake. And a week later they're giving makeup tutorials.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and don't forget, Chicks in the Office did the same thing. They had a reading list as well.
They had a reading list as well. And that's why Kirk always kind of like will take little digs here and there. Their reading list was how to raise your children, though, if you remember,
That's
Dan.
right.
That's where Kirk got so mad, Coleman, because they were suggesting books on how you can teach your children about race and what your children
Not a
should be
chance they
reading.
read any of them, though.
And not
Like,
a chance they read any of them, Coleman. Thank you. You
Yeah.
worked there. Like, come on. Come
no,
on.
I mean, it just doesn't seem like something they would read. Great if they do, but I'm of the belief that if you're giving a reading list, you have to have read every single book, page to page, cover to cover on there. So yeah, I wasn't really buying it.
They jumped on a trend. They saw the way the world was going, and they thought they were going to be on the right side of history. And I think Kirk and Mike do say that their heart is in the right place on this episode. Their heart's in the right place, but they're just going at about it wrong. And then Blind Mike tries to give them an out, and Kirk's like, no. Like Coleman, to your point, they're influencers. They have a huge platform, and they're out there literally telling people to burn down police stations.
Well, I don't know if this is necessarily a defense of them, but in their defense at the time, being an influencer and not saying anything was looked at as just as bad. And maybe even worse because the rest of the media was accepting of you saying anything and not doing the research. So it was a tough spot to be in. I think they mentioned like KFC took a 3-week vacation during this time or whatever.
Yes.
And my instant thought was like, okay, so he probably didn't want to have to talk about this and thought maybe you could
do with it.
breeze through it, you know?
We didn't want to get criticized for not turning his Instagram square black, right?
Yeah. But hold on. Here's what I'll say though. Going back to this time, and I just don't. The only thing that really made it bad though is that they then called Kirk and his fans racist. So it's like, oh, you don't believe what we believe. Like, I'm a racist. I fucking grew up with Cape Verdeans. So like, I'm a racist because I don't turn my Instagram black, and I'm not willing to donate money to funds where I don't know where it's going. Like, what are we actually like? That's the thing that I think pissed Kirk and a lot of us off the most is that instead of just being like, all right, I think you're wrong on this, you're on the wrong side of history. No, you're racist. Like, you're an actual. I think what's Michaela, was that her friend, Danny, that said that?
Yep.
Yeah. That, basically calling us. So that's where Coleman, where it's like, I don't want to let them off the hook because they went to the extreme point. Yeah. They went to the extreme point. All right, Danny, any other?
Dave? Well, I was going to say, Dave, did you notice how Turtle Boy gets brought up in this? I think it was Kirk quoting Turtle Boy that actually
go ahead. Good catch.
started a lot of this process. And I thought that was interesting because, Turtle Boy being such a controversial
lightning
figure
rod.
at times.
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, he definitely is a great reporter. Sometimes when he gets into like the weird nicknames and calling people's names and stuff like that can
come
I
dumpsters.
can get a little bit in the weeds. I can see where that sometimes takes away from credibility in the eyes of the mainstream media. But the fact is the guy does the legwork. He's a hard worker. He gets out there and he's willing to say things that other people aren't. But I will say, even for me, like I have friends that if I post anything or even mention Turtle Boy, they'll jump down my throat and be like, I can't believe you trust that guy. Like, I can't believe like I've gotten criticized from my own friends about even listening to Kirk. They're like, "Oh, he's such a righty and a Republican and conservative, and he's a
And you listen
I
to him
didn't
and he's
get
not.
that. Yeah, I didn't
Of
get that
course
at
not,
all
of course
from
not.
this episode.
These are people that don't know. Actually, some of them are people that listen to him with Jerry on EEI, and now by association, Kirk still gets grouped in with Jerry, and Jerry keeps getting branded a racist. So, I think that's
yeah, but
part
Jerry actually might be, but that's fine. Anyway.
No,
I'm just saying.
Kirk brings up like multiple times throughout this episode where it's like, I'm not saying it's a black or white thing, but like, how is, the death of George Floyd maybe as, important as, a 77-year-old woman or someone hit by a 2x4 or whatever he said.
right. Or David Dorn in St. Louis.
Or a cop, yeah. Or, burning down a police station. What about, the black cops that could be working there and their families, and how are they going to support them? So I didn't get that at all through any of this, but I just thought it was very fair.
The girls here have a very myopic point of view. It's very much like, and I hate fraud virtual signaling, but that's exactly what this is. And then you've got Gina coming on defining things, and she's like Ibrahim X. Kendi using the word in the definition.
I mean,
the definition of anti-racism is going against racism, and it's like, it's just so vapid and stupid. Like they're just not thinking about things. They just think, don't forget to pack your sunscreen and wear your mask, and it's like, go out and protest and shoot to kill. It's like
shoot to kill. No, hold on. I think my favorite line, and whoever, I don't know if it's you that's going to do this, Danny, or Menners or John or whatever, to splice this in. I mean, we have to play Gina saying, riot and looting are not unique experiences for reasons and not reasons.
Yeah,
it's the greatest. It's the greatest.
Right here.
Yeah, it's the greatest fucking line maybe in the history of this show. Kirk is screaming, laughing. He then becomes a Gina fan. If you guys re-listen to this episode, he literally says, "I love this girl. I fucking love this girl. Like I'm a fan. I can't help it."
My first thought on it was, Gina's just a modern day Shakespeare. To be or not to be, reasons or not reasons. It's crazy.
Good pull there, Coleman. I like that. It's literally listening back and knowing where we are in the world and knowing what these people now have become. How they're, I guarantee you, Ellie Schnitt hasn't tweeted or Instagrammed about BLM or anything like it since this summer. It's crazy what these people were out there doing. I do think Coleman, their friends living in New York, and being around that circle were like a lot of pressure to, like, if you didn't do that, you were considered like a racist. And instead of just standing up and saying like, I don't know where this money's going, and just having some conviction, like Kirk did, and you just went along with it in group think. Now, when you got hired at Barstool, was there still some ramification? You were hired after COVID, right? So you were going into the office, or were you working from home?
I was fully in office. This wasn't really COVID, but my senior year, I did a bit of a smaller internship, online remote, like through, I don't know, winter through spring, and then went into the office.
So was there any leftover though animosity? Like, for instance, he talks about Coley Mick here, right? Danny, I think you wanted to bring this up. Go ahead, Danny. You can set the picture.
Well, he mentions Coley Mick writing one of these blogs, about funding the police and supporting the riots and all that kind of thing.
So, like, was Coley still there when you were working there? Like, was Coley already gone too?
Coley was gone, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then as famously, I mean, his partner Trill Withers, they had the basketball podcast together.
Yeah.
Quit because of Dave. This is where Dave talks about this a lot. This is where Dave, I think, if he didn't buy back Penn, if this Penn ESPN deal didn't go through, this is why Dave was one of the big reasons I think Dave was going to leave the company, is he felt a lot of people in that office did not have his back through this. Trill Withers quit. Willie Colon quit. Who was the other guy? The shitty college football dude, something Jackson. He quit. Like, they all had this little thing. And Josh, that dude Josh was out there trashing him on Twitter.
Yeah.
People that worked for him. And I do think that he disconnected from Barstool at this point. And he started going off and being his own thing. And I think, so I was wondering, Coleman, were there any remnants left over when you started there of like these sort of interactions and things like that?
I really don't think so. I think everyone at that point, everyone that I can remember, was truly just fully backing Dave, always in support. I do think that, and I don't want to speak for him, but Dave does take to heart the people that do defend him publicly and ride with him consistently. And obviously Kirk was one of those guys.
Yep.
You bring up Josh. I remember, I believe jet ski kind of defended Dave at the time
He
against
did.
Josh. So
Yep.
that was a thing too, where you saw recently where Troops and Expressions were fired or laid off in the recent things going on. And, I had heard that Dave had called up jet ski and was like, hey, just want you to know, like, you're good, you're safe here. And, jet ski made it through layoffs and was perfectly fine, is doing healthy debates with Rico, who gave a great plug for, live pay-per-view and everything. So, he's doing all right now. And he was a guy
Good.
backing him up. So, yeah, I think loyalty does go a long way, and it's remembered for sure.
Yeah. So no, I was just wondering if there was still any remnants. So it sounds like when you started there, a lot of these people were gone or on their way
Yeah.
out already. So
Yeah.
you kind of missed that whole aspect in the office. So that's something that me and Danny were wondering because, like I said, like it's just all people did was question, like, hey, where's this actual money going? And then if you did that, you were a piece of shit, you're a racist, and you hate black people. And it's crazy how far we were at that point in society.
Yeah.
Danny, any other topics or anything else that caught your attention that people need to re-listen when they're re-listening to this episode?
I think just listening, especially towards the end, where, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, but where Gina's going through the whole handbook to rioting, guide to rioting.
What did Steve say? What was Steve's line? Fucking guide to the anarchist cookbook. He basically says, he's like, she's giving the anarchist cookbook live on the podcast.
Well, and she comes from a long line of protesters and all this stuff.
That's right. That's right.
Give me a break. I mean, I think, my mom marched against the Vietnam War, but I wouldn't say that, hey, if I go to a Second Amendment rally or something, I'm not like, hey, I'm, my family's a protester family. It just, absolute ridiculousness. But you can tell the amount that Ellie interacts, it's probably about as much as, I talked on the show a couple episodes ago when Menners got all pissed. She just was would interject with oh yeah, right, okay, and you could tell.
Yeah, she had no idea what was going on. She had no idea.
Go off the rails, and Ellie, I think, is starting to question. Okay, she's getting into like Molotov cocktails and putting signal on your phone and stopping jamming and like.
And the mask, so you can't get recognized.
Steal your identity, cover
that
up
was
tattoos.
crazy. I think the mask. I was fully expecting, be sure to mask up so that you're not spreading. No, so that you're not identified. Are you
identified? Yeah,
long sleeve shirts and everything, like crazy.
And that's when Kirk is like, like, how is Dave allowing this? Like on, like, I mean, he goes, I'm for free speech, but like, this is crazy that this is a Barstool podcast, and we're telling people how to like commit a fucking crime. Like, it's funny because Gina's insane, so we were all laughing. But if you look at it objectively, it's nuts.
The most insane line was for every black person killed, burn down a police precinct. That by far is the craziest line.
It's crazy. It's tit for tat, I guess. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. So listen, guys, this is my all-time favorite episode. This is my all-time favorite era in the Kirk Minahan era. Jack Coleman, I know you're re-listening. When you get to this era, this like month, these 2 to 3 months are just unbelievably spectacular, especially if you can put yourself into where we were in the world and remember that Kirk is like the only one that's not super far right? You had your far right people that are like, hey, this is crazy. Kirk is the only one that's like, listen, I believe in abortion. I'm left, gay marriage. Like, I am not a far right wing person. This is fucking crazy. And he was the only one that had the balls to be in the center and say stuff like that. So when you're re-listening to this era of KMS, Coleman, just kind of put yourself there and remember that. That's the advice I would give you.
And I think to that point, Dave, he gets on Portnoy and those guys for not responding, because I think that's the thing. He doesn't want this scrubbed. He doesn't want it censored, but then there should be a response. And if it's just, the problem is Kirk was one of the few to actually respond publicly, and then he got shit for it. You couldn't say anything that was off script at that point without getting piled on.
Yeah. And then, I mean, it comes to find out she ended up leaving because Erica and Dave wouldn't, so to continue this, she went on Instagram Live like 4 days later and was doing like a makeup tutorial. Like, I wasn't joking about that. So we went from like, let's burn down police stations to, hey girls, foundation. Like, you know what I mean? And the Minifans, Coleman, we took over. It was
those comments.
Where the comment section was crazy. Because she was trying to read comments live on air. That's what she did during her Instagram lives.
Yeah.
She was interacting with fans, and she couldn't do it. Coleman, she couldn't do it. Everything was Gina. Where's Gina? Molotov cocktail, police station, and she ended up snapping by the end. And I think she went to Dave and Erica and was like, get Kirk to back off because she was not going to be able to do an Instagram live anymore. And that was where she made. I think those girls, Coleman, you can probably attest to this better. They make a lot of their money on there, no?
Oh yeah, for sure. I
Right?
mean,
Like,
even now with like TikTok and stuff.
Yeah,
Like even if it's
swiping
not
up.
a live, like taking that get ready with me, and like even if it was, let's say, the TikTok version of that, like the comments I assume would equally be just as brutal. And there are a lot of people that use TikTok, and I even say Instagram now, that are just like almost like comment fiends where they make their bread and butter off of funny comments and replies and getting hella likes that way. So I could see it even today's day and age just being equally as brutal.
So basically, I think what happened is we absolutely dominated that Instagram live. Like she couldn't read any comments, she couldn't do anything. We took it over. They ended up snapping by the end. She's like, "You guys are all losers," and like they got really mad at us. And I think she went to Dave and Eric, and I think that was the beginning of the end for her at Barstool because they were like, credit to Dave and to Erica. We're like, hey, like no, like your content, you called him out, you called him a racist, you called his fans racist, like figure it out. And then she wasn't able to do any Instagram lives for a while because like we were waiting for it. Like she couldn't go live without us. We had nothing to do. This was COVID.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, we were all like chomping at the bit. So I think go ahead, Danny.
I think she went silent altogether for a while. She kind of pulled the K Marco, where I think she was working there for a few months with very little contact, not much schnitt talk, like you said. No Instagram live.
No. I think she let her contract run out. They had agreed and like let her, and then she was just gone. But I think that was like one of the last things that she did. And she went to Dave and Eric. They said no. At Dave and Erica, they said no. And I think a few months later she was gone. So that was Kirk's first kill before K Marco was Ellie Schnitt.
It's crazy too because like within content, like you're at that heightened level of putting yourself out there and having to answer for these actions and everything. But if this was someone like an intern or a producer or anyone, they'd be getting called out the same way. So not being able to handle that as a content person is crazy. I mean, all it really could have taken was one Instagram video, one podcast explaining where she went wrong, one meeting with Kirk, and everything could have been saved there.
Agreed. So all you got to do is play along. We say it all the time. We've
told
people. I mean, you heard the Felger and Maz last week, right? Like literally, Felger just defused that whole situation with the Kirk, Linda Pizzuti, and Maz, and just by Felger being like, "Hey guys, you can call in Kirk." Yeah, Tony got fooled. He didn't say Kirk's name, but he alluded to it enough to where what happened? We stopped calling. It was over. Kirk was like, he had fun. It's over. It's
not fun anymore. Yeah.
It's not fun anymore. Like that's the worst thing you can do is battle, is dig in your heels. So anyway,
look
last
at EEI when we've done those call blitzes at EEI, they just wouldn't acknowledge it. They shut off the phone lines. Like if they just played along for a second, it would be a totally different ballgame.
Agreed. All right. Any last thoughts, boys? Once again, my favorite episode. I encourage everyone to please go re-listen to this. It's unbelievable. We'll splice in the drops later. Danny, any last thoughts before we let you go?
It is a great one. I think that's all I got. I mean, this, as much as I think a lot of the episodes we've done, I mean, this was jam-packed, but it was specifically on this topic. There was a little less jumping around, I think, to a million different topics in there usually.
And Coleman, because
Kirk was so fired up, he really wanted to get into this and dig deep.
Yeah, and Coleman, do you notice no phone calls, no what's next?
Yeah.
This is a big theme me and Danny have noticed to the Steve Robinson era to the Cullinane era is there's no rundown. It's literally they're just free flowing.
Good topic.
So that's something.
Yeah,
good topics, exactly. So and Coleman, any last thoughts or for anything?
Just once again, please buy the pay-per-view, barstool.tv/ppv.
Boom.
It's going to be an amazing night. We got this episode, like we've been saying, the first Socko. Let's make this one even better, even bigger. It's going to be an awesome time. I can't wait to see so many of the Minifans there and really just start to be able to put a face to some of these names. Really excited for it. And thank you guys for inviting me on, further opening up my world to this. And thank you, Kirk, again. Awesome content.
All right, Coleman, I think you did a great job. Good luck. Even if you don't get the job, Coleman, I hope you stick around the world, keep re-listening.
Definitely.
You've honestly, I'm a Montante guy. That's one of my buddies. But if he doesn't get it, if he doesn't get it, I am rooting for you. I think you'll do a fine job as well. And you're just a good person. You're a good guy. So we hope you stick around the world. And I'm excited to meet you on Saturday. I'll go up and shake your hand.
Yeah, man, for sure. You, me,
Yeah.
Montante. We'll get a big 3 pick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
All right.
man. Coleman, good job. Great job so far. And good luck. It's been fun chatting and nice getting to know you. And I reiterate Dave's point. It'd be good to keep you in the world. Even,
Definitely.
however this goes, whatever happens on Saturday.
100%, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Danny, get back before your wife beats the shit out of you, okay? Have a good day, guys.
Good. All right.
See ya.
Thanks.